So this is now recording.
Great.
Got people coming in.
And I had to change my chat setting to post to everyone. Arsh, you might want to do that as well.
Yeah.
I really should.
Otherwise, you'll just end up talking to me.
Oh man, nothing
And
wrong
we
with
can do that on Slack.
Cool.
People are joining. Hey everyone, we're gonna give it a couple of minutes before we start, just to let everyone join. I see people coming in now, so give us a few minutes. And as always, this webinar will be recorded and then put in the info hub. If you are a A2IM member, you can access it in the resources section. But it'll take us like a day or two for our marketing manager to kind of trim it and make sure everything looks well for it to be posted up. So just FYI. Okay, cool. I think we can get started now. So thank you everyone for joining. This is CreateBase's webinar. And we have Arch Jesse here, both going to talk to you more about their company. And thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and listen. And thank you both for hosting as well. So feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for everyone that is slowly trickling in today. We're super excited to talk to you a little bit about problems that exist in publishing and what any independent artist can do to solve those problems. My name is Arsh Shah. I'm the founder, one of the founders, along with Jesse here of CreateBase. My background is about a decade in artist management. I've also been an intellectual property attorney for some time, but that's a little bit about me. And
Yeah. I'm Jesse Buddington. I'm one of the other co-founders, and I also work in law, although not as a lawyer the way that Arsh does. My background has been in building legal technology and especially intellectual property technology for companies like Louder and Spotify, so that normal people or lawyers can use that technology through like common sense input methods and get the answers that they want out of these relatively sophisticated pieces of legal tech.
great. So today, just to give you guys all a brief overview of what we're going to talk about, we want to just kind of give you an idea as to the state of music publishing in 2025, where royalties fall through the cracks, and how metadata is at the crux of that issue. Moreover, really what good looks like, right? What's the best sort of possible situation for an artist in 2025? How do we help them repair their metadata, use their own knowledge to their advantage? And where does CreateBase fit into all of this? What makes this different than existing solutions out there on the market? And we'll end a little bit with a brief Q&A and some free resources for all of you on the call. So the big problem, I think, with rights management and publishing today, it's really labor intensive, right? Every solution on the platform, on various platforms, feels like you're doing your taxes, you're filling out spreadsheets, you're entering information, industry codes, and data that you can't verify. And you usually have to place your trust in companies, in publishers, in managers, and in other entities to make sure that this information gets filled out and that artists end up getting paid, or artists that you're working with getting paid, get paid. Additionally, the state of publishing in terms of the money that's out there for royalties that have been unclaimed is quite large. We're really only able to see US mechanical royalties, from the MLC as our primary sort of data source. They have publicly available information that's out there to show the size of this unclaimed bucket of money. And that's about $1 billion a year. That grows at a rate of $20 to $25 million a month. Other public performance royalties, sound recording royalties, and international royalties are hidden behind obscure sort of areas, right? And it's very tough for the public generally to get access to that information. So we're already operating here with limited visibility, but when that's combined with the difficulty of engaging with the right platforms to make sure that your publishing gets taken care of, we end up in a very precarious situation.
There's also another thing to think about here, which is not even represented on the royalty iceberg, but sort of the surrounding ocean, which I think are sync licensing opportunities, derivative works requests, any of these sort of more interesting uses of music, where someone like a music supervisor will come in, they'll pick their top 5 favorite songs that they enjoy listening to, and then they'll do probably 5 to 10 minutes of research on each song because they're very, very busy, and they'll find the 2 songs that are 100% correctly registered, and they'll throw away the other 3 songs. So if you have 99.99% of your song registered and there's that 0.01% missing, your average music supervisor is going to immediately go away from that track because they believe that it would be too much effort and too much time spent to go get 100% of the picture. They'll concentrate on the other songs, and that means that you're never even receiving the opportunity in the first place that you don't know that you're missing.
Just want to poll the audience here. Just have a quick question for all of you. What percentage of income do you think gets lost on a per song basis for unpaid royalties? For if you're an artist, how much money or how much percent do you think gets lost due to unpaid royalties for your work? Feel free to drop some responses in chat. Got any idea? 40%? 40%, 15 to 20%. Let's see. Anybody else? 30%?
Yeah, so we got a pretty good range between 15 and 40%.
Yeah, that's great. 25 to 30% on average is uncollected income per track. We were even more surprised to find out that 70% is the percentage of incorrect DIY song registrations in the US. These are pretty staggering numbers, particularly if you have a large catalog that you work with or a lot of releases. There's a lot of money that's being left on the table.
You could infer from these things that the long tail is being particularly disadvantaged, that indie songwriters are at a particular disadvantage because they tend to use these DIY registration systems. They're probably toward the higher end of percentage of income that's being missed by not having these sort of more involved registration systems.
On average,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Even at the majors, the folks that we've talked to say, it takes us about 10 minutes to record a brand new song. It takes us on average 45 minutes to fix mistakes that have been made by existing songs.
And on average, in terms of what we see with CreateBase, our artists come into the platform, they're able to really collect properly. And magic happens when we have clear data, and even more so, the right fields that are able to be accessed by artists on the platform. So our goal really, in terms of why CreateBase exists, is to make sure that artists have clear data, are using their own knowledge, and are collecting money that should be paid to them.
One more statistic in here that we'll touch on a bit later is the duplication of identities. And this happens across various different societies. This happens especially when names get translated to a particular language and then translated back into English. But these different identities occur. And so, whereas one might think, well, I'll just do the best job possible to record my information, there's kind of a sweet spot of like, you want to do a complete job only one time and in a way that could not possibly be misinterpreted by anybody else. Because if you do too good of a job, you'll end up with different identities that might compete with your main identity. The job is then for you to notice that that's happening, to somehow interpret that you're not getting all your royalties, and then go in and find all of those different identities and use your personal knowledge to say, hey, these things are all me. You should combine them under this one and only identity that I want to have.
So there are a wide range of areas that royalties can get lost. There are a lot of cracks in data and missing data, holes that exist within large catalogs, even smaller catalogs that exist.
So this one kind of goes in order descending down. Royalties can get lost when there is no work registration in a database, right? If I've got a track, it's done some streaming, I don't have a work that I can find in my database to even potentially match it to, those royalties are just going to sit until they either get, digested, paid out by market share, the way that the PROs do, or just sat on forever until MLC decides to do something with them, which is what their current process is. Even if I have a work, if it doesn't sufficiently match the track, especially if the artist name is different, this happens a lot with cover songs. I think that's one of the biggest challenges facing a lot of these databases is that they don't know which underlying composition exists within a particular cover song, but that money won't get matched or paid out. Even if I have a work and it matches, I might have an incomplete registration. That was that sort of 99.9, case I was talking about earlier. Somebody deserves that extra percentage point, and they may make significant money if it's a top 40 song, but they're not making any of that money because their share is not reflected on the registration. No contact information for co-writers is a huge one. That's, we've got your share on the song. It says that you own it. It's got an IPI number attached to it. We have no idea how to get in touch with you. And because we can't get in touch with you, we can't then pay you. The next one after that is no payment information. We have the ability to get in touch with you. Maybe we've even sent you an email. It's gotten lost in your inbox somewhere. So because we don't have bank account information or credit card information or whatever mechanism it is that we use to pay you, we cannot pay you. And so your money is just sitting, at that database. The last one is what I was talking about earlier, duplicate identities or ASRCs. There is a such thing as doing more than a good job of registering yourself. And if there's any duplication of identity, even things that seem very, very simple, we found cases where having like a person's name and then a person's name, comma, junior, causes royalties to that person to not be paid.
So let's talk a little bit about, what is hard about this process. Of course, there's all these cracks in data, but I think the true problem also exists in terms of what artists can be expected to complete, what artists have access to, and really how comfortable they feel engaging with the right information. The brain of the artist for us, and really as we started CreateBase, we realized there was a lot of power in the artist's story, but we realized as well that too many companies out there, too many managers and publishers and people that work day to day with artists fail to understand how that artist knowledge can be used to unlock a lot of different things and repair publishing issues that exist in catalog. Artists usually lack the resources or deep knowledge that is required to speak music publishing. They don't have platform trust. They don't trust people around them to have a working level knowledge of how their work was created. They usually also don't have time, right? Many artists that we've worked with are quite busy. They might be touring, playing live shows, trying to work through the things that they should be doing as musicians instead of spending their time bogged down in spreadsheets, IPI numbers, ISWCs, and ISRCs, and trying to make sure that their work is properly paying them. We really realized that to build a platform that places the trust back in the hands of these artists, we had to understand how to unlock their own stories for them to use. And I think what makes CreateBase very different is placing that trust back in the artist and allowing them to have the agency to participate willingly with the rest of the industry. We want to make sure that the artist is respected as an industry participant. And a lot of that is just ensuring they have the confidence to succeed as well.
When we were designing our system, we really had to think about what are the tools that an artist has available to them at the times at which they are most likely to have some free time, where they're sitting on a tour bus or when they're sitting on an airplane or when they're sitting in an airport waiting for an airplane to take off. They're not going to dig out their laptop and start working on their spreadsheet. They're going to have a phone They're going to maybe be able to talk into that phone, but not type with their thumbs. So we really had to redesign the process from the ground up to work with the tools that the modern artist uses in times where we know that they have time to be able to fill out this kind of stuff and to be able to tell us their story in their own words. I'm curious, actually, we've got this resentment for spreadsheets bit as our last bullet point. And I would like, if you would, put your favorite emoji in the chat if you either use a spreadsheet or if you use a website that masquerade like it basically is a spreadsheet in disguise, right? If your website looks like a bunch of form fields and you have to fill it out, go ahead and put something in the chat that shows that you use that method.
Yeah, the casual smiley face, of course.
That's good.
Nice. And I think the big thing for us as well was just to understand what outcomes we wanted, right? What outcomes we wanted for artist confidence and to be able to leverage that own information. And so we asked ourselves this question, what if the brain of the artist became the core source of truth for so much of these so many of these publishing problems, right? How do we engage with artists in a language that they understand that makes sense to them? How do we ask them the right questions to unlock the value of that information? And how do we then allow every other industry participant to leverage that knowledge, leverage that information that we're creating, and allow artists to be at the crux of this behavioral change? Traditionally, what we've seen as well is that rights education today is very, very fragmented. We've got PROs trying to educate artists on why rights and getting their publishing in order is important. We've got publishers and distributors trying to make sure that they can make sense of what an artist has to say to them. And all, wrapped up in that is the fact that human error exists. Humans are imperfect. Humans may misremember a digit, misremember a name, misremember a number. And when that point of data becomes the barrier to getting an artist paid properly, we knew that something really had to change. And the right benefit that exists as a result of building a system like this for us is to make sure that everybody can enjoy the benefit of higher data verification, higher data quality, and have the confidence to participate, knowing that their actions are being guided in the right way.
And a lot of the time when we talk to artists, Arsh is an artist manager, and I certainly working with all the cover song artists that were on Louder, we would get two questions about music publishing. Number one, how do I do music publishing correctly? And then we would explain it. And the very second number two question was, oh God, why is this so complicated? I think a lot of existing platforms work to help you understand what the current process is and how to go through all of the steps. But I think it's time for platforms to start tackling that second question. Does it have to be this complicated? What if it were less complicated? What if it spoke to me in my language? What if I could use the knowledge at the tips of my fingers, in my phone contacts, in my pocket, in my brain, to be able to answer some of these questions in a common sense, straightforward kind of way, and have that actually be useful knowledge that will cause me to get paid my royalties?
And for us, we really realized that CreateBase had to be the right tool to solve these problems and to drive these outcomes. Speed, I think, was the core determinant of success here. And most publishers, most folks in the industry have made this trade-off between speed and accuracy of information. That's something that we talk about a lot internally. You're either working through something incredibly, incredibly quickly, but you can't verify the accuracy of the data and the accuracy of the publishing information you're putting out because the right guardrails don't exist. So CreateBase was built with smart technology that kept the artist, kept a human at the core of the process. We have an innovative flagship feature we internally discuss as story of splits. That allows for a natural language story to be put into clean, PRO-ready, registrable metadata in under 90 seconds. We've also got deep identity matching and reconciliation features across all of the PROs. And we've got a one-click registration methodology that enables proper metadata delivery with speed And of course, the added benefit here is accuracy and speed don't have to be this point of trade-offs anymore. You can both move quickly and accurately. With CreateBase, we allow for complete splits aligned with the PRO's needs and metadata standards. And we do that by making sure when you're filling out your publishing information, you have the right context. You understand what needs to exist, how to be guided properly in that direction. And allowing you to have a variable degree of effort is also really important, right? You can either do very little or you can have complete control. And as we'll get into later in terms of solutions and what the landscape for publishing workflows looks like today, there's usually a very large sliding scale. You either have zero guidance or you're not guided by a platform and full control, or the other way around with no control. You're placing all your trust in a platform that is going to provide full guidance in a particular scenario.
There's a conversation kind of paradigm that I'm reminded of. You don't have to respond, but think to yourselves, you know, has there ever been a time where you've had a conversation with somebody and you've said something really important to you, and they've said, I don't understand, could you tell me again? And you have to start over from step zero and go all the way through what you just communicated, what you just wrote, or what you just said. It's really frustrating. As opposed to if they say, okay, I think here's what I understand from what you just said, and they tell you the thing you said back to you, they get about 90% of it. And it's only that remaining 10% that you're like, okay, cool, you missed this, maybe important detail, but I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over every single time. We really wanted to build technology that would do something like that. So our technology pulls in the existing registrations, the existing shares, the way that the song looks on Spotify and Apple Music, so that our music looks like music and doesn't look like a line in a spreadsheet. So that the artist can look at that and say, okay, cool, my song looks pretty good. It's missing this one thing. I can easily identify the stuff that is either not there or is there incorrectly. I can identify the empty space that I or my co-writers would occupy. I can fill in exactly how much space that is, and I don't have to look at a blank, form field set and provide absolutely all the information, including specialized industry codes like IPIs or ISRCs or UPCs, because what I need to be able to do is talk about who played what in the studio, who wrote what in the writer's room, those things that only I have access to, that it's actually very hard for a distributor or a DSP or a label to get a hold of without talking to the artist and getting that information out of them.
So where are we going, right? Where's CreateBase headed with this new paradigm that exists? And powered by artist knowledge, I think we can do a whole host of things. We know that so many other players in the landscape today are focused on black box. And I think for us, sure, that's table stakes. But I think what interests us more is understanding how to save artists time, make them more money, and drive the process forward through the right use of technology. There's no secret that the willingness of AI and AI participants has become a topic as of recent in industry news. And we know that AI also existing and AI material also existing on tracks going forward is going to give rise to the whole host of derivative and derivative of derivative works. This introduces legal complexities, licensing problems, and moreover, the understanding of what it means to be a human author of work in the age of AI. And we want artists to feel confident to understand what this landscape is going to look like going forward and to have confidence in their own story, how that contributes to the tapestry of how their song was made. We're building features to understand what that story looks like, how to create verification around data and information for delivery, and to make sure that AI as a willing participant in the song creation and song story process can exist. Additionally, as Jesse's mentioned before, identity management is really important. There's been no shortage of streaming fraud that exists in the industry. We've seen the majors crack down on this. We've seen Spotify crack down on this. And of course, with the rise of AI and AI-assisted music, identity, I think, is now more important than ever. This serves a few purposes. One, to help artists dedupe existing song registrations, but two, to create the verification of making sure an artist is who they say they are, making sure that money goes to the right artist, doesn't get locked up in, a bad IPI number or a bad name string, right? We want to make sure that artists have one primary identity no matter where their music is registered and wherever they go on the internet, whatever they do in the future.
This is also something that we've seen work very successfully in other arts industries. For example, film. You're generally not allowed to have the same name spelling as any other person that works in film, or at least that is a SAG member. So because of that, you can do name string matching and these more basic forms of matching to make sure that people are properly credited for the things that they do. And we're trying to bring that to the music world. One more note sort of on derivative works specifically. We believe that derivative works are going to be the future, that synchronization, which is kind of the big hot thing right now, getting your music placed in a film or getting your music placed in a TV show, that is a type of derivative work. And really the sky is the limit when it comes to derivative works. It is the broad catch-all category that includes medleys, mashups, remixes, interpolations, like all kinds of stuff. There's generally three classes of artists that can reliably get a derivative work license. One, you're close personal friends with the original artist, right? You can take them out to lunch. You can go ask them, hey, can I do a version of your song? Number two, you are a chart topping artist. And when your people call their people, the answer is just always going to be yes. Number three, you are specifically Weird Al Yankovic. And within those three groups, you can create whatever you want. Your creativity is only limited by what you can think of and what you can put together the infrastructure and the players for. With everybody else, it's a really hard battle because the data is not sufficiently put together. The method of agreeing to the negotiation is not fast enough or straightforward enough. It doesn't make equal sense to the person on the music industry side and the person on perhaps the normal common sense artist side. And so it's much easier just to say, hey, like, this is not worth my time. I got to say no to this as just a blanket policy. And it means that a lot of these things are not coming into initial life, or they're having to be released in these underground channels where they can't make any money for the original artist or for the artist who has this brilliant idea to put together this reinterpretation of some of their favorite work. When I was working in cover songs, a lot of the groups, many of whom were like college a cappella groups, right, really loved the music that they were working with, really deeply wanted to create their own tribute to it, loved it so much that they wanted to get into a studio with a bunch of their friends, during midterms week and spend their valuable time making something that inspired them. And I think we should be supporting that as much as possible. I believe it's technology's job to support that, to make sure that the negotiations are straightforward, easy to understand, and don't take a long time or a lot of effort, especially from the person on the music industry side, and also that the artist can get to speak their own words and have those words be interpreted in the correct way.
I think artists as well have been treated for the vast majority of their creative lives as speaking a different language, living in a different world. And I think that's something for us that we really wanted to change. And so a lot of data exists in the music industry. We've got data from PROs, we've got DSP data, we've got supporting documentation for contracts, legal arrangements, there are recap arrangements, there are advances, there are all sorts of documents around the rights that an artist should have. And all of these rights affect the artist deeply in terms of their ability to make money and have long-term financially sustainable careers. But artists have really never been able to leverage this data to their advantage. And we realized at CreateBase that this was fundamentally a translation problem. Artists are surrounded by all of this information. They're drowning usually in paperwork, and they don't understand how to interface with the individuals responsible for this data, right? Their managers, their publishers, maybe distributors that they work with. So we really had to think about, how does the artist's story, how does the artist experience enable them to solve this translation problem? And on the contrary, music publishing also has to be able to speak to artists. The industry has to be able to speak backwards and actually understand that the artist is a valuable source of data and of information.
A lot of the time, the music industry, especially the publishing industry, expects certain defined categories of what an artist can do. But artists make art. Artists can do anything. And, if I come to an artist and I say, hey, I can support you as long as you've done something in category A, B, or C, and they're like, well, what about category Q that I did? And I say, oh, I don't think we support that. That's a failure of the system. The system needs to be able to say, all right, tell me what you did. I'll figure out what category it needs to go into. Even if that category doesn't yet exist because you've done something brand new, the system should really figure out, where to put that and how to benefit the artist from having made that visionary thing that has never before existed.
In terms of outcomes, we really had to also think about, what do artists deserve in 2025? What makes sense to them? What are they looking for from existing solutions, from platforms, and from their own information that they're not getting? And why have they not gotten these things? So that, for us, I think boils down to three things. Confidence in their own ability is the first thing. Artists are already working uphill to make sure they're releasing music on time, they're marketing their own careers, and they're putting out quality work. But why can't that extend to data, right? Why can't that extend to their stories, the information that they need to make them more money? We've seen so many artists that just decide to do nothing because solving this problem is too hard. We've seen so many artists that place trust in outdated pieces of technology or people that may not always have their best interests at heart, because they're just itching and trying to get paid, trying to have a more financially sustainable career. And artists themselves don't realize that they are the key to unlocking many of these powerful workflows for publishing, for data, and for information. And we believe that as AI, as technology, and as the landscape changes and shifts due to regulatory environments and due to many of the legal changes that are going to come up in the industry, artists have to be at the center of that fight. They have to be at the center of that change. And CreateBase, I think, was built to empower the artist. It's so important for us, even as we build smart technology, to keep a human, to keep an artist at the center of everything that we do.
Part of the reason that we believe in helping artists to tell their story is that it is a very human thing to devalue your own knowledge. All the time when we're working with people, maybe, some of us on this call have had this exact situation. You come into a studio, somebody lays down an amazing solo on an instrument that you don't play, and you're like, oh man, what an incredibly talented person. And then you're thinking, everything that I do, I just do it step by step. I've done it for the past like 10 years of my career. I've learned all these skills inch by inch, little bit by little bit, note by note. And, what I'm doing isn't that great, but what this other person did is super great. And then secretly, unbeknownst to you, in that person's mind, they're like, man, I just came in and I played like a 2-second guitar solo. And they're like, oh man, that made the track, but I don't really see it. It's all this production stuff. Like I could never do this level of engineering on this track. This is what's going to make this track really sing. And I think helping an artist to describe the human contribution, the years of work and knowledge that they put into the craft that they love, into every single song that they work on. That's really the job of the smart technology that we're talking about.
So just want to get into, what the landscape for solutions and platforms looks like. And as we said before, it's really a sliding scale of control and guidance, right? You've usually got no guidance on both ends of the spectrum and varying degrees of control. Usually, an artist has control, but with no guidance, they really don't understand what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to input data. This leads to a high percentage of user error. If there's no educational resources, or if the educational resources are so complicated that an artist doesn't understand them, we end up with a frustrated, upset artist that just doesn't want to do anything, right? And this is why platforms aren't as effective as they should be, right? Artists' trust is the greatest commodity that we have as an industry. And it's really important for us to make sure that platforms out there educate the artist in the right way, make sure that they're putting out accurate data and information, and are properly guiding the artist to make those proper, correct decisions without it feeling labor intensive, without it feeling exhausting or frustrating, or taking all the time in the world that we know artists don't have.
And some of these questions seem extremely basic, but are incredibly important and incredibly valuable when the artist is the one giving the answer. We're not asking artists to like even tell us their own IPI number. We might ask them to tell us what their society is, and then we'll go to that society and get the IPI number. But like questions like, what is your last name and how do you want it spelled? It's a very basic question. Most people can answer that off the top of their head without a second of thought. But it is one of the most valuable things to get from an artist is how do you want to be represented across the internet? What is the one and only way that you want to be represented across the internet so that we can find you everywhere you exist and help you collect everything that you owned?
That really brings us to what a minimum viable data set for song registrations looks like. We know that the MLC and we know that PROs have these pieces of information, all of which aren't always obvious, right? Particularly contact and payment information, as we've said before. ISRCs and ISWCs are notorious for having duplication, right? We know that certain platforms out there recycle and reuse ISRCs. We know that IPI information is usually inaccurate. There's usually duplicate IPI numbers if you have a case of mistaken identity. So these things feel simple in practice, right? And in terms of understanding how they need to be filled out in the right way, artists usually think that they can handle many of these things just on the basis of tools that exist. But what they don't see and what they don't usually have access to are all of the inconsistencies in their data and information that are out there for their works and for their catalogs. And a lot of platforms out there will show the artist these things to create a sense of urgency. We believe, unfortunately, that that's not good enough. We have to make sure that corrective actions can be taken to actually repair the problems that exist.
Yeah, all of the companies in this space, as Arsh said, are fighting against the same enemy, which is artist inaction. It's looking at the problem, feeling like it's too big of a problem to do anything about, and choosing to do nothing. Or not understanding where to take action and feeling like you're forced into doing nothing, which I think is even worse. Um, there is a subset of this information that is the true bare minimum that a platform would accept. It's work title, the last name of one writer, and some contact and payment information. But hopefully, based on everything you've heard in the rest of this call, you will see that if you had a song that just had title, the last name of one person, and maybe some payment information, I mean, I don't know what I'd put, maybe 90% odds that that person will not get paid.
Yeah.
And a lot of songs exist in our ecosystem that have only that level of information. So this is the true minimum if someone wants to get paid for their share.
Sounds great. Well, we're at about 40 to 43 minutes here, and we'd love to just open it up for some questions. Any questions from the audience that you guys might have? Can you show us CreateBase? Great question. We would be happy to book you in for a quick demo call. Absolutely, Steve. That's definitely something that we're certainly open to doing, and we've done many a demo. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that gets set up for you.
Are artists
Just
who are not domiciled in the US at a disadvantage? Yeah, I think they absolutely are. Particularly with regard to some of these local databases, you know, the MLC is a good example of a database that is very public, very open about their data. They have a public search. They have a lot of these good tools, But if you're not in the United States, you might not realize that the United States has money for you any more than as a US artist, if there was money waiting for me in Guam or Indonesia or something, I'm not going to go check that database. I'm not going to think to do that. We really do need the landscape of publishing and music data companies to work together to establish one sort of um, canonical data set. And it's everyone's job to put that together, to reveal the holes in it, and then to try to go get answers to those holes. When we talk about the long tail, that includes everyone who's performing music, right now, or who has ever performed music, or whoever will perform music. And the physical long tail in the universe is unknowable. There are people who are not on the internet who only play guitar in a train station somewhere. We're never going to be able to find those people without them connecting with us and coming forward. With the digital long tail, that's everyone who is using the TuneCores, the DistroKids, the Deezers, the different companies of the world, Bandcamp. Um, that's knowable. All of those people are connected to the internet. And if we can get in touch with everyone and we can speak to them in a language that they understand, even if that language is not English, even if that language is a specialized version of English that is specific to the EDM community or the hip hop community or the classical community, these are the ways to get people involved in this system, not trying to teach them to be music publishing experts.
Eric's question, are we talking about ASCAP and BMI? Yes. CreateBase natively supports all of the major PROs, MLC, ASCAP, BMI. We also support Sound Exchange on the sound recording side as well. We've also got support for SOCAN, and we're also working, of course, with ASCAP for reciprocal agreements that exist with ex-US entities as well. So most of our major markets outside of the US, I'd say Latin America is our next largest market, and we have a deep presence that's growing, particularly in Latin America. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. Will your company end up collecting money on our behalf? You're just making sure that our data is accurate at our PRO, at Sound Exchange, at Songtrust, etc. The way that we natively work is that we have entities that exist at all the PROs to go through the collection process. Fundamentally, that is how 95% of our artists work with us. We do have a number of business relationships that work in different capacities. And for businesses, we are introducing standalone features and standalone product lines that exist within CreateBase to serve other functions. But as an artist, your value added benefit is being able to handle this all in one place, make sure that your data is up to date in one place, and to get paid in one place. So we do pay out artists the money that we receive from the PROs.
Yeah, with our direct artist platform, we wanted to make the money collection and payout process feel kind of like using a PayPal or a Venmo account, with the one that would integrate with a distributor, which is, I think, the direction CreateBase wants to go in. Because again, like I said, everyone who puts music on the internet is using one or more of these distributors or record labels. We really want to partner with them so that the money coming in from Spotify from your streams is then just added to by the money that would come in from your songwriting royalties, your performance royalties, etc. We're trying to make it as easy on the artist as possible so that they don't have to have a bunch of different accounts in a bunch of different places.
Great. Let's see.
Good question from JA.
Yeah.
So yes, when you are an Indian artist and your music streams in the United States and has to make its way back to India, money is lost with every hop. Similarly, if you're a US artist and you get streamed in India and it has to go back to ASCAP and then back to your publisher and then back to you, money is lost with every hop. So, as we develop CreateBase, we're looking at ways to reduce the number of hops. And the major labels all do this by having local offices in every single country on Earth. CreateBase has like 10 people working for it, so it's going to be a while before we can have local offices in every single country on Earth. But there are some things we can do in the meantime to make sure that we can register for these local PROs, have local representation, even if we use a partnership with an artist that lives in that country. There's a bunch of different ways we've been thinking about how to solve the problem, which is the minimization of those hops that take money out every time one happens. Peter asks, how do you prove human authorship at registration with so many AI-generated works? Uh, Currently, we have the method of the artist comes in, they tell their story about how they made the song. We're actually working on some smart tools, and I'm not going to talk too deeply about them because they are very much in the works. But we'd love to be able to be in the writer's room. We'd love to be able to be in the studio with the artists, to be able to say, I can't say whether or not AI was used in this track, but I do know that this song took 16 hours to complete, and it involved this many stems, and it involved this many edits to those stems. And someone can interpret that knowledge as, okay, cool, I don't think this is an AI song. That's a much more solid vouching for than just a thing that says, I certify that this song was AI or I certify that this song was not AI.
Yep. What's your business model and which PROs do you have direct relationships with? Of course, we know that there are publicly available data sources that exist at the MLC. There's ASCAP and BMI, and then, of course, Sound Exchange. We are, of course, growing to expand future platforms as they become available and as we start to see more volume on the platform for those particular rights management solutions and PROs. And we do want to make sure that we can eventually end up supporting wherever an artist wants to send their music, right? Wherever an artist wants to register their music, whether that's within the US or rest of world. Our business model is really flexible. And I think for us, we wanted to prioritize a one-way payment flow to the artist. And this means, you're paying a baseline subscription annually. And after you pass a predefined threshold of royalties collected for you based on the works that are registered through CreateBase, we actually refund your subscription cost to you and take a small percentage as you grow, as you scale, as you upskill, and as you start to continue to see income coming in from your royalties. And this was really important to us to make sure that we scaled with you. A lot of platforms out there are charging artists for technology, charging artists for registrations, making sure that artists become a profit center for them. And we realized that if done correctly, artists could grow with us. And we respect the craft. We want to make sure that artists continue to have sustainable careers. All right, let's see. We've got another one from Ada. How do we audit existing right data in bulk? So this, I think, is a critical question. All of the context exists. All of the data exists. Most platforms on the market have access to all of this information. And I think the big thing for us is, one, not populating the right information, not presenting that information in the right way, and not rectifying the inconsistencies that exist across PROs. Most platforms only try to look at one PRO at a time. They have a limited number of ingestion formats and usually a largely manual process. So for CreateBase, something that we're actively working on and should be out, of course, in the near term, is our ability to ingest arbitrary files, Schedule A documents, contracts, any sort of documentation that exists to show a catalog of work. And we're able to cross-check that across the PROs that might exist. Okay. What do session musicians need to do to maximize their revenue? Jesse, do you want to take this one?
I got that one. I put it in the chat. But basically, if you're a session musician, make sure that you register for Sound Exchange through CreateBase or through your own efforts. You should also look into AFM if you're in the US. They have a pool set aside for session musicians on recordings. Union membership is not right for everybody, but I really like it. So definitely look into it and see if you want to join AFM. We can work with union and non-union musicians alike, so it makes no difference to CreateBase what you do in that regard.
Great. And then do you cover YouTube and platforms like Meta where royalties lie uncollected because they need to be attributed?
We are currently working on getting a Content ID partnership with YouTube, and we would like to be able to use that not only to be able to block things because that's not really what we want to do, but even more importantly is being able to put ads against things, monetize things. We believe in a world where anybody can remix a song if they want to, and that the thing that's most valuable to the artist is to be able to participate in the income that comes from that song remix. when artists can make money off of not only their own efforts, but also off of the efforts of people who were inspired by their original work, that's when we have the healthiest music ecosystem. Cooper asks, I know the site communicates with Spotify. Does the site read off Apple, Bandcamp, SoundCloud? We are working on building support for the Apple Music API, the Tidal API. We're looking at other platforms that we might be able to either get an API connection with or just be able to read the content of the site. But yeah, eventually, one of the things that makes CreateBase really great is that we treat music like music. We make it look the way it does on these stores. We show you the album art thumbnail. We show you the formatted artist display string. You can look at it in a way that you're familiar with looking at it when you go look at your own Spotify or Apple Music page. And we want to keep that, we want to make it as flexible as possible. So yes, we are absolutely working on integrations with some of these other freely available APIs. And it's really nice that these companies have decided to make their API freely available instead of charging a bunch of money for it. We really appreciate the commitment to that. It's one of the nicest things that the DSPs have done is make those API results available.
Great. Well, with 5 minutes left, we just want to say thank you to all of you that are on this call. We really appreciate you coming out. Of course, thank you to Nicole and the A2IM team here. And we're happy to continue to field questions after this call. I think JA asked another one.
Yeah, we don't yet provide an API directly, but we are looking at what it's going to look like to incorporate CreateBase technology into a distributor.
Yeah.
One of the things that we sort of unlocked accidentally when we got the registration method to be really, really fast is that I believe we have the first registration method that is fast enough that while your song is uploading to your distributor, you could do your registration of your IP before that song finishes uploading. And we want to really take advantage of that because we know that's a point where the artist is sitting at their computer uploading these recordings and kind of otherwise not really doing much. So we'd love to be able to ask them questions about the song as it's uploading and be able to plug that into their distributor experience. So that's very much something we're excited about. It's something we will need to build an API or a piece of technology to support that with. So we're definitely heading in that direction.
Absolutely. And as a thank you to everyone on this call, and if you're an A2IM member, we have an exclusive discount for A2IM members for our annual plan. So we'll make sure that that gets sent across following this webinar. We're also going to be including a free guide. It's a 10-point checklist to prevent royalty loss. We know that there's a very complex landscape out there. A lot of artists really don't always know what to do. Of course, CreateBase can handle a good percentage of that. But for those of you that want a brief checklist, we're going to be including that in the email that goes out. But thank you all so much for your time today and for hearing us talk through this little webinar. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing from all of you soon.
Thank you so much, Arsh and Jesse. It was a great presentation, and thank you to everyone who came in to watch. We will put this up in the Info Hub in a day or two once we trim it and make sure it's all good. So you could look into the Info Hub in case you want to review all of the information that they mentioned again. But thank you both so much again. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you all so much.
Appreciate you as well.